story. 1. The Basement Study Group. It started with a simple email from Professor Whitman, sent only to me and 4 other students in his Advanced Statistical Analysis course. You 5 have shown exceptional promise. I'd like to offer you the chance to participate in a special study group. We'll meet in the basement of Sterling Hall, room B17, Thursdays at 10 p.m. This opportunity is not available to everyone. Please keep it confidential. At first, I was flattered. As a junior struggling to maintain my scholarship, this attention from the department's most respected professor felt like validation. The other students, Diana, Marcus, Ellie, and Trent, were all top performers. Being counted among them meant something. The first meeting seemed normal enough, though the basement location was strange. Sterling Hall was the oldest building on campus, and its basement was a maze of narrow hallways and utility rooms. B17 was at the far end, past the boiler room. The space was small, with a single table surrounded by chairs, no windows, and flickering fluorescent lights that made my eyes ache after an hour. Professor Whitman was different there, more intense, more demanding. He'd assign us complex statistical problems that seemed unrelated to our coursework. When I asked about this, he just said, "Trust the process. This will benefit you in ways you can't yet understand." By the 3rd week, I noticed changes in the others. Diana, usually vocal and confident, had grown quiet. Marcus had dark circles under his eyes. When I asked if he was sleeping, he laughed hollowly and said, "Sleep is for people who don't want to succeed." The professor started keeping us later each week, midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2 a.m. When Ellie mentioned having an early class, Whitman's response was cold. "You can leave any time. But remember, opportunities like this don't come twice." None of us left. In our 6th week, after solving a particularly grueling set of problems, Whitman brought out a bottle of amber liquid. A reward, he called it. Not alcohol, he assured us, but a cognitive enhancer of his own creation. I watched as the others drank without hesitation. Their trust in him was complete by then. I pretended to sip mine, but emptied it into my backpack when no one was looking. The next day, I found Trent in the library, staring at his laptop. When I touched his shoulder, he jumped so violently he knocked over his coffee. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. "You okay?" I asked. "Never better," he said, but his voice was monotone. "The professor gave me some problems to solve. Been at it for 18 hours, but I'm close." "So close. Maybe you should sleep." He grabbed my wrist, his grip painfully tight. "Do you think that's what the top students do, sleep? Is that what you do?" I pulled away. "I think it's what humans do." He looked back at his screen. "Maybe that's why you're falling behind." He was right. Despite the extra study sessions, my performance in the regular class was slipping. I was too exhausted to focus, too confused by the disconnect between the course material and what we were doing in the basement. When I checked my midterm grade that afternoon, I was shocked to see an A+. I hadn't even completed half the exam. Something was wrong. That night, I stayed after our basement session, pretending to gather my things slowly until the others left. Then I approached Whitman. "Professor, I don't understand what we're really doing here. These problems, they're not just statistics, are they?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're perceptive. That's why I chose you." "Chose me for what?" "My research requires certain intellectual resources, young minds with specific capabilities." A chill ran through me. "What kind of research?" "The kind that will revolutionize cognitive science." He moved closer. "But I worry you're not fully committed. The others have completely embraced our work." I thought of Diana's vacant stare, Marcus's twitching hands, Ellie's new habit of muttering equations under her breath, and Trent's manic energy. "They don't look well," I said carefully. "Side effects of rapid cognitive development. Temporary." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Tomorrow night, we're moving to the final phase. It's crucial everyone participates fully. No more pretending to drink your supplement." My blood went cold. He knew. "I need to think about this," I said, backing toward the door. His expression hardened. "There's nothing to think about. You signed the consent form." "What consent form?" "The one in the packet you all received at our first meeting. Page 17, if I recall." His smile returned, predatory now. "You really should read things before signing them." I remembered the thick stack of papers he'd called administrative formalities. We'd all signed without reading, eager to begin. "I'm not coming tomorrow," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "That would be unwise. Your scholarship, your academic standing, they depend on my assessment. And more importantly, your friends need you. They're too far along in the process now. Without the full group dynamic," he shrugged, "their outcomes become uncertain." I fled the basement, my heart hammering. Back in my dorm, I tried calling each of the others, but none answered. I searched online for information about Whitman's research, but found nothing recent. His department page mentioned only that he was on sabbatical, which made no sense since he was teaching our class. Sleep was impossible. By morning, I'd made a decision. I went to the department head, Dr. Levinson, and told her everything. She listened with growing concern. "Nathan, Professor Whitman retired 3 years ago. He has no authorization to be teaching or conducting research here." Campus security was called. They found no evidence of meetings in Sterling B-17. The room was used for storage and had been locked all semester. No one had seen Whitman on campus in years. But the most disturbing discovery came when they checked on the other students. Diana, Marcus, Ellie, and Trent were all found in their respective rooms, alive but catatonic. Medical tests showed severe neurotransmitter imbalances. None have recovered consciousness. The university tried to bury the incident. They claimed the students had participated in an off-campus drug experiment gone wrong. No mention of Whitman. No explanation for why I was spared. Sometimes I still dream of that basement room, have problems with no solutions, have the professor's eyes watching me calculate and calculate and calculate until my mind begins to fracture. And sometimes, late at night, I receive emails from an address that shouldn't exist, promising special opportunities. If only I'd give the process another chance. I never answer. But part of me wonders what I might have discovered if I'd just taken that final drink. Story 2. Roommate wanted. Oh, when Josh moved out mid-semester, I posted a roommate wanted ad the same day. My financial aid barely covered tuition, and I couldn't afford the full rent alone. I needed someone immediately. Eric Dawson responded within hours. His email was professional, mentioning he was a graduate student in psychology who needed a quiet place to study. We arranged to meet at a campus coffee shop the next morning. Eric was tall and thin with neatly trimmed dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He dressed like someone's dad, khakis and a button-down shirt, despite being only a few years older than me. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. "I value cleanliness and privacy," he told me, stirring his black coffee methodically. "I keep to myself mostly. I'm researching behavioral patterns for my thesis and spend most evenings in the lab." It sounded perfect. I was a mechanical engineering major with a heavy course load and part-time job. I wanted a roommate who wouldn't throw parties or bring drama home. "When can you move in?" I asked. "Today, if possible." By evening, Eric had settled into Josh's old room. He brought surprisingly little: clothes, books, a laptop, and 2 large filing cabinets that took both of us to carry upstairs. "Research materials," he explained, locking them immediately. The first few weeks were uneventful. Eric was quiet and clean, often gone before I woke up and back after I'd gone to bed. We rarely crossed paths except occasionally in the kitchen, where we'd exchange brief pleasantries before retreating to our rooms. The first odd incident happened about a month in. I came home from an evening study session to find every light in the apartment on, though Eric wasn't home. More strangely, each light bulb had been unscrewed just enough to create a subtle flicker. It must have taken considerable time to adjust each one so precisely. I texted Eric, Everything okay with the lights? His reply came instantly. Sorry, testing something for my research. Fixed now? I went around tightening each bulb, unsettled but not alarmed. Graduate research could be weird, I reasoned. A week later, I woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of my bedroom doorknob turning slowly. Still half asleep, I called out, "Hello?" The movement stopped. Footsteps retreated down the hall. When I checked in the morning, Eric had already left for the day. That afternoon, I noticed something else. Small marks on my door frame, as if someone had been measuring its dimensions. Similar marks appeared on my window frame. I texted Eric again. "Everything okay? Thought I heard you at my door last night." "Sleepwalking. Sorry, stressful time with research." I bought a simple rubber doorstop that night. Other small oddities accumulated. Items in my room would be slightly moved, nothing taken, just rearranged. The shower drain began collecting unusual amounts of hair, though neither of us had particularly long hair. Once, I found all the photos on my desk turned face down. When confronted, Eric always had plausible explanations. He'd borrowed a book and tried to put everything back exactly. He'd been cleaning and must have moved things. He had no idea about the photos. I might have believed him, except for what happened with the previous roommate. Josh had moved out suddenly, leaving most of his security deposit behind. When I finally reached him by phone to return some mail, his response was strange. "I can't talk about that place," he said, his voice tight. "Just check the vents in your room." That night, I removed the vent cover under my window and found a small wireless camera pointing directly at my bed. It was expertly installed, connected to the apartment's electrical system. Heart pounding, I searched the bathroom and found another camera behind the mirror. There was one in the kitchen ceiling light, one in the living room smoke detector. I called campus police immediately. While waiting, I tried Eric's bedroom door. Locked, of course. Using a credit card trick I'd learned from my locksmith uncle, I managed to jimmy it open. The room was meticulously organized, almost sterile, with blank walls and minimal furniture. One of the filing cabinets stood open, revealing hundreds of manila folders. Curiosity overcoming my better judgment, I pulled one out. Inside were photos. Dozens of them, of people sleeping. Different people in different rooms. Some looked like dorm rooms, others like apartments. In each folder was also a detailed journal, recording sleeping patterns, daily habits, personal interactions. The last folder in the drawer had my name on it. It contained photos of me sleeping, eating, studying, changing clothes. Notes documented my class schedule, when I showered, what I ate, who visited. Even records of my phone conversations, presumably from listening devices I hadn't yet found. The most disturbing page was titled Subject Response to Stimuli. It detailed Eric's systematic testing of my reactions to various intrusions, the light bulbs, the door tests, the moved objects. He'd been gradually increasing these stimuli to measure my threshold for environmental disturbance recognition and confrontation probability. When police arrived, they found more than just surveillance equipment. The second filing cabinet contained hair samples, used tissues, toothbrushes, and other personal items from what appeared to be at least 12 different subjects. Eric had been conducting his research for years. Even more disturbing was the small refrigerator hidden in his closet. Inside were vials of blood, labeled with names. Mine was among them. I never discovered when or how he'd collected it. Eric Dawson wasn't even a student. The university had no record of him. His real name was Paul Mercer, a former psychology research assistant who'd been dismissed from a university in Oregon 3 years earlier for ethical violations. He was arrested, but released on bail pending trial. The evidence from our apartment was ruled inadmissible due to my illegal entry into his room without a warrant. Most charges were reduced to minor privacy violations and trespassing. The university offered me emergency housing and counseling. I accepted both, but couldn't shake the feeling of violation. Every new place I've lived since, I check for cameras. I sleep with my bedroom door barricaded. I change my routine frequently. 2 months ago, I received an email from an anonymous address. Subject shows increased vigilance behaviors consistent with sustained psychological impact. Observation continues to yield valuable data. I changed apartments the next day. I deleted all my social media. I take different routes to class each day. But sometimes, catching a reflection in a window or glimpsing someone who resembles him, I'm certain Eric is still watching, still taking notes, still considering me his subject. And sometimes, in my darkest moments, I wonder if that was his goal all along. Not just to observe me in that apartment, but to create a permanent state of paranoia he could study indefinitely. Every unexpected sound, every flickering light, every slightly moved object is now data for his invisible research. My fear has become his lifelong experiment. Story 3. The Final Project. Professor Hargrove's advanced film production course was legendary at Westridge University. Each year, only 12 students were admitted, and they had to produce a final project that would reveal truth through the lens. Those who succeeded often launched serious careers in filmmaking. I nearly collapsed with joy when I received my acceptance email. As a scholarship student with no industry connections, this was my only shot at breaking into film directing. The first day of class, Hargrove made his expectations clear. I don't care about your excuses, your limitations, or your feelings. I care about your willingness to do whatever it takes to capture authentic human experience on film. Your final projects will be screened at the university's Visionary Film Festival. Make something forgettable, and you make yourself forgettable. Looking around at my classmates, mostly wealthy kids with expensive equipment and industry relatives, I knew I needed to create something extraordinary to stand out. Weeks passed as we learned advanced techniques, presented concept pitches, and formed production teams. I partnered with Damon, a talented but arrogant cinematographer whose father owned a production company in Los Angeles. Despite his occasional condescension, he had access to equipment I could never afford. For our final project, we decided to create a psychological thriller about a student who becomes obsessed with documenting his roommate's descent into paranoia, blurring the line between documentation and causation. We titled it Observed. As director, I wanted raw, authentic reactions. What if we actually created real paranoia? I suggested to Damon. Not acted, but genuine. His eyes lit up. Method filmmaking. I love it. But who's our subject? The answer came the next day when my roommate, Tyler, mentioned he'd be spending the weekend at his girlfriend's place. Tyler was a nervous, high-strung pre-med student, already prone to anxiety about his academics. I have an idea, I told Damon. Let's use my apartment. While Tyler's gone, we'll set up hidden cameras. Then we'll start manipulating things. Subtle changes he can't quite be sure about. We'll capture his genuine confusion and escalating paranoia. That's... Damon hesitated, then grinned. That's actually brilliant. Completely unethical, but brilliant. Hargrove will eat it up. Over the weekend, we installed tiny cameras throughout the apartment, in light fixtures, behind vents, inside the smoke detector. We also planted motion sensors that would trigger specific events. A drawer opening slightly when Tyler turned his back. His computer waking up on its own. The shower turning on at 3 a.m. This is pretty invasive, Damon said as we finished. Are you sure about this? I thought about my scholarship, about the festival, about impressing Hargrove. It's just for a week. We'll tell him everything afterward and get his permission to use the footage. If he refuses, we'll delete it all. Tyler returned Sunday night. By Monday evening, our experiment had begun. At first, the effects were subtle. Tyler would place his keys on the counter, then find them moved to the coffee table. His textbooks rearranged themselves. His laptop would be open when he was certain he'd closed it. The footage was compelling. We watched him doubting himself, checking and rechecking things, growing visibly tense. After 3 days, he started talking to himself, trying to rationalize the inconsistencies. This is gold, Damon whispered as we reviewed the footage in the editing lab. Pure psychological breakdown in progress. On day 5, we escalated. While Tyler was in the shower, I snuck in and wrote, "Watching you," in the condensation on the bathroom mirror, then slipped out before he finished. The camera captured his face as he stepped out and saw the message. Pure terror, followed by him frantically searching the empty apartment. That night, we programmed his TV to turn on at 2 a.m., playing static at low volume. The night vision camera showed him waking, staring at the screen, then unplugging every electronic device in the apartment before barricading himself in his bedroom. When I returned home the next morning, Tyler was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. "Someone's been in here," he said, voice hoarse. "I think I'm being watched." "That's crazy," I said, feeling a twinge of guilt. "Maybe you're just stressed about midterms." "No," he insisted. "Things are moving, messages appearing, I hear noises at night." He leaned closer. "I think someone's trying to drive me insane." I almost confessed then. The experiment had gone far enough. But Damon texted me that afternoon. "Hargrove watched our rough cut. Says it's the most promising project he's seen in years. Wants final version by Friday for early festival submission. One more day," I told myself. One more scenario. Then we'd reveal everything and get Tyler's permission. That night, we programmed all the lights to flicker at midnight, followed by the sound system playing whispers at barely audible volume. I stayed at Damon's place, unable to watch in person. The next morning, Tyler did answer my texts. When I returned to the apartment, it was empty. His phone, wallet, and backpack were still there, but he was gone. I checked the footage and saw him at 3 a.m., frantically packing a small bag, whispering, "They're in the walls. They're in the walls," before fleeing. Panic set in. I called his girlfriend, his other friends. No one had seen him. By evening, I was desperate enough to confess everything to my film professor. Hargrove's reaction shocked me. Instead of concern, his eyes gleamed with excitement. "This is beyond my expectations," he said. "The authenticity of his terror, the ethical boundaries you've crossed for your art. This is exactly the commitment I look for." "But Tyler is missing," I protested. "And that uncertainty, that guilt you're feeling. Capture that on film too," he insisted. "This isn't just a student project anymore. This is your calling card to the industry." I left his office disgusted, both with him and myself. I went to campus security and told them everything. They called the police. A search began. Tyler was found 3 days later, hiding in an abandoned building near campus. He was severely dehydrated and in a state of extreme paranoia, believing he was being hunted by entities living in the walls and electronic devices. He was hospitalized and eventually withdrew from school. Criminal charges were considered but ultimately dropped when Tyler's family opted for a private settlement with the university. Damon's father's connections and money helped minimize the scandal. Hargrove kept his job but was removed from teaching the advanced film course. Damon transferred to NYU the following semester. I lost my scholarship and was placed on academic probation. The footage we captured was confiscated, but not before Hargrove had made a copy. 6 months later, a film called Observed, A Study in Induced Paranoia, appeared at an underground film festival in Berlin. The director was listed as anonymous, but the cinematography credit went to Professor Alan Hargrove. I recognized every frame. It ended with real news footage of Tyler being taken to the hospital, followed by a closing statement. "Art requires sacrifice, sometimes the artists, sometimes others." I've tried contacting Tyler to apologize, but his family has made it clear I'm never to approach him again. I switched my major to business, abandoning filmmaking entirely. Still, on sleepless nights, I wonder about those cameras we installed. I wonder if all of them were really found and removed. I wonder if somewhere, someone is still watching, still recording, still turning my guilt into entertainment for others. Story 4. The Pledge. I never wanted to join a fraternity. I was at Essex University on an academic scholarship that covered tuition but nothing else. Between classes and my part-time job at the campus bookstore, I barely had time to sleep, let alone participate in Greek life. But my roommate Connor was determined to pledge Alpha Sigma Phi, the most prestigious fraternity on campus. They had connections that practically guaranteed jobs after graduation, alumni who donated generously to their brother's startups, and a house that looked like it belonged in a movie. "Just come to one Rush event with me," Connor pleaded in early October. "I don't want to go alone." I agreed, expecting a typical frat party. Beer pong, loud music, drunk sophomores. Instead, we found ourselves in a wood-paneled library where impeccably dressed juniors and seniors engaged us in conversations about our career goals and academic interests. No alcohol, no hazing stories, no crude jokes. Ethan Matthews, the Alpha Sig president, spoke to me personally for nearly an hour. He was charismatic and articulate, asking insightful questions about my engineering studies. By the end of the night, I was surprised to find myself hoping for a bid. 2 weeks later, both Connor and I received invitations to pledge. The financial concerns that had initially held me back were addressed in my letter. We believe potential should never be limited by financial circumstances. Speak to Treasurer Marcus Whitfield about our scholarship options. Marcus offered me a legacy grant that would cover my dues and provide housing in the fraternity mansion, solving my financial problems instantly. All I had to do was maintain my GPA and participate fully in the pledge process. "We take brotherhood seriously," he explained. "Total commitment is non-negotiable." So, pledge season began normally enough. We memorized Alpha Sig history, cleaned the house, ran errands for brothers, and endured mild hazing that never crossed into dangerous territory. There were 20 pledges initially, but by November 5 had dropped out, unwilling to meet the increasingly demanding time commitments. Everything changed at midnight on November 15th, what the brothers called Commitment Night. The 15 remaining pledges were blindfolded and driven to a location off campus. When they removed our blindfolds, we stood in a clearing in dense woods, surrounded by brothers holding torches. They wore black robes with the Alpha Sig crest embroidered in silver thread. Ethan addressed us. "Tonight, you prove your commitment to the brotherhood. Tonight, you show us you can keep our secrets." One by one, pledges were led deeper into the woods, returning 30 minutes later looking shaken but resolute. When my turn came, Connor wished me luck, his voice unnaturally tight. 2 seniors guided me through the trees to a second clearing where a bonfire burned. Beside it stood a table with an ornate wooden box. Alpha Sigma. Phi was founded on principles stronger than friendship, Ethan said, appearing from the shadows. Our bond is sealed in blood and sealed in trust. Every brother makes a sacrifice to prove his loyalty. He opened the box, revealing a silver dagger and a document. "This is your pledge of silence. Sign it, then make your offering." The document detailed the absolute secrecy required of Alpha Sig brothers. Not just about initiation rituals, but about all business conducted by the Brotherhood, and the methods by which the Brotherhood ensures its continuing prosperity. "I don't understand," I said. "What exactly am I agreeing to keep secret?" "Sign first," Ethan said calmly. "Then you'll understand everything." Something felt wrong. The other brothers had formed a tight circle around me. There was no path to leave except through them. "I need to know what I'm agreeing to before I sign," I insisted. Ethan's pleasant demeanor vanished. "You've already accepted our financial support. You've already learned too much about our traditions. There's no backing out now." "Let me make this simpler," said another voice. Marcus emerged from behind the fire. "Sign and make your blood offering, or face consequences." "What consequences?" "Your scholarship will disappear. Your housing contract will be terminated immediately, and your academic record might suffer some unfortunate amendments. We have brothers in the registrar's office, the financial aid department, the housing authority." I looked at the paper, then at the knife. "And if I sign, You'll have access to opportunities beyond your imagination. Every Alpha Sig pledge completes initiation finds doors opening throughout their lives. Our network is extensive. I signed. The document was immediately taken and placed back in the box. Now, the blood oath, Ethan said. I expected to prick my finger, maybe make a small cut on my palm. Instead, Marcus handed me a different paper, a list of pledge names. Cross out one name, he ordered. That's your sacrifice. I stared at the list. Connor's name was there. So were the names of pledges who had already completed this ritual tonight. I don't understand. One pledge doesn't continue after tonight, Marcus explained. That's the sacrifice each of you makes, choosing who isn't worthy to become a brother. And what happens to them? Nothing tragic, Ethan laughed. They simply fail. All their work as a pledge is erased. They're blackballed from Greek life entirely. Their connections to current brothers are severed completely. Choose, Marcus urged, or we choose for you. I couldn't do it. These were guys I'd bonded with for months. Connor was my friend. The others had worked just as hard as I had. I choose myself, I said finally. Cross my name out. Silence fell. The brothers exchanged glances. That's not how this works, Ethan said quietly. Then I'm done. I moved toward the edge of the circle. Let me leave. No one moved. Marcus sighed. We told you there's no backing out. You've seen too much. I won't tell anyone, I promised. You have my word. We require more than words, Ethan said, but we'll give you one more chance. Choose a name or face initiation rejection yourself, with all associated consequences. I glanced at the document I'd signed, understanding its true purpose now. If I refused, and they sabotaged my academic record and financial aid, I'd have no recourse. I'd agreed to absolute secrecy about their methods. Trapped, I made the only choice I could rationalize. I crossed out the name of a pledge I barely knew, a sophomore who had a family business waiting for him regardless of fraternity connections. The relief on the brothers' faces was immediate. Marcus took the list, nodding approvingly. Congratulations. You've proven your commitment to protecting the Brotherhood's interests above personal feelings. That's what Alpha Sig requires. I was escorted back to the main clearing, where other pledges waited. Connor looked at me questioningly, but I couldn't meet his eyes. By dawn, we were back at the fraternity house. One pledge was missing, the one whose name I'd crossed out. No one mentioned him. Over the following weeks, I watched my fellow pledges change. We were given more privileged information about how Alpha Sig maintained its campus dominance, cheating rings for exclusive access to exam materials, blackmail files on key university administrators, elaborate hazing rituals recorded for leverage against brothers who might someday try to leave the network. I learned that alumni donations often came with expectations of preferential treatment for current brothers, jobs, admissions to graduate programs, investment opportunities. I learned that some of the house's luxury items were purchased with embezzled student activity funds. With each new revelation, the trap closed tighter. We were all complicit now, all bound by the blood oath and signed documents that would ruin us if revealed. Initiation week arrived in December. The final ritual involved each new brother receiving a silver ring with the fraternity crest and a USB drive containing enough incriminating material to destroy someone on campus. Your responsibility to protect and leverage is needed for the Brotherhood, Ethan explained. Mine contained evidence of a popular professor's affair with a student. Connor's had financial fraud documentation on the dean of students. We were no longer simply fraternity brothers. We were hostages to each other's secrets, bound by mutual assured destruction. I wear the Alpha Sig ring now. I live in the mansion. My financial problems have disappeared. My future job prospects are secure. But at night, I remember the pledge whose future I sacrificed. I think about the professor whose career I could ruin with a single email. I wonder what someone else might have on me. Most of all, I wonder how many other prestigious campus organizations operate on the same principles: selective recruitment, generous benefits, and ironclad systems of control that ensure no one ever reveals what happens behind those impressive doors. Brotherhood, I've learned, is just another word for chains you willingly accept, not realizing how heavy they'll become until it's too late to break free. Story 5. The Experiment. The flyer on the psychology department bulletin board promised $500 for participating in a sleep study. As a broke sophomore with mounting credit card debt, I signed up immediately. The screening process was rigorous. Questionnaires about my sleep habits, medical history, psychological profile. After 3 callbacks and a physical exam, I was accepted. Only 8 students made the final cut. "You'll be staying in our sleep lab for 1 week," explained Dr. Valario, the research director. A slender woman with prematurely gray hair and intense eyes, she spoke with clinical precision. "We'll monitor your brain activity during various sleep states while testing a new auditory learning method." The consent form was 20 pages long. I skimmed it, something about subconscious information processing and potential temporary disorientation, before signing. The $500 was all that mattered. The sleep lab occupied the top floor of the psychology building's north wing, an area usually off-limits to undergraduates. 8 identical rooms contained hospital-style beds with monitoring equipment. A common area with couches and a small kitchen connected them. We arrived on a Friday evening. 4 men, 4 women, all strangers from different departments. After a brief orientation, technicians attached electrodes to our scalps, chests, and fingers. Dr. Valario informed us that the first night would establish our baseline sleep patterns. "Starting tomorrow, you'll hear audio through special pillows during your REM cycles," she explained. "The content will be academic material related to your majors. We're testing whether complex information can be absorbed during specific sleep phases." That first night passed uneventfully. I slept deeply despite the unfamiliar surroundings and monitoring equipment. On the second night, things changed. I woke suddenly at 3:17 a.m. according to the digital clock on my nightstand. The room was dark except for the small status lights on the monitoring equipment, but I had the distinct impression someone was standing in the corner, watching me. "Hello?" I called softly. No answer. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed beyond the normal study surveillance. Eventually, I fell back asleep, dismissing it as a hypnagogic hallucination. At breakfast, I noticed the other participants looked tired. Elena, a biology major, mentioned having strange dreams. "I was in a maze," she said, stirring her coffee absently. "Someone was chasing me, but I couldn't see who, just heard footsteps." Others nodded. They'd had similar experiences, dreams of being pursued, watched, trapped. Only Jason, a business student with an athlete's build, seemed unconcerned. "I slept like a rock," he shrugged. "No dreams at all." That day, we underwent cognitive tests, memory exercises, problem-solving tasks, reaction time measurements. Dr. Valario seemed particularly interested in our emotional responses, frequently asking how different scenarios made us feel. The third night, I dreamed vividly. I was running down endless university hallways, doors locking automatically as I approached them. Something was behind me, gaining ground. The dream shifted, and I was strapped to my sleep lab bed, unable to move as shadowy figures performed some procedure around me. I could feel cold metal against my skin. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m. again. This time, I was certain someone stood in the corner, a dark silhouette, motionless. "Who's there?" I demanded, reaching for the lamp. Before I could turn it on, the figure stepped backward through the closed door, literally through it, as if passing through a curtain. At breakfast, everyone except Jason reported nightmares. Elena looked especially haggard, her hands shaking as she described dreaming about being dissected while conscious. "It's just the unfamiliar environment," offered Michael, a physics major. "Plus, knowing your sleep is being studied probably triggers anxiety dreams." Dr. Valario, overhearing this, smiled thinly. Very common in sleep studies. Nothing to worry about. But when I returned to my room to grab a book, I found my journal moved from the drawer to my desk. I always secured it in the drawer's back corner, but now it lay centered on the desktop, as if someone had been reading it. During that day's cognitive tests, I noticed new equipment in the testing room. A machine that looked like an MRI but smaller, and a device with what appeared to be a laser guidance system. "What are those for?" I asked the technician. "Different phase of the study," she answered without elaborating. By the fourth night, tensions were high among the participants. We gathered in the common area after dinner, comparing notes in whispers. "Has anyone noticed missing time?" asked Michael, the physics major. "Yesterday, I started a cognitive test at 2 p.m., but when it ended, the clock said 5:30. The test couldn't have lasted more than an hour." Elena nodded vigorously. "The same thing happened to me. And I found this." She pulled up her sleeve to reveal a small puncture mark surrounded by a bruise on her inner arm. "I don't remember getting this." Others showed similar marks in different locations: the back of a neck, behind an ear, between fingers. I checked my own body and found nothing, but that didn't ease my growing paranoia. "We should leave," suggested Tara, a quiet art history major who'd barely spoken until now. "This isn't what we signed up for." "We can't," Michael replied. The consent form specified that leaving early forfeits payment and may result in academic penalties for disrupting research protocols. I need that money, and I can't risk academic probation. He was right. We all needed the money, and most of us couldn't afford potential academic consequences. We agreed to stick it out, but promised to watch out for each other. That night, I barricaded my door with the desk chair and kept the bedside lamp on. Sleep came fitfully. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the lamp went out despite being plugged in. The chair scraped across the floor as the door opened. 2 figures in medical scrubs and surgical masks entered. I tried to scream, to move, but my body wouldn't respond. I was conscious but paralyzed, able only to watch as they approached with a metal device that resembled a cross between a hypodermic needle and a small drill. One held my head firmly, while the other positioned the device at my temple. I felt pressure, then a sharp, burning sensation as it penetrated the skin. There was a whirring sound, a click, then excruciating pain as something was extracted. I blacked out. Morning came. The chair was back in its original position, the door unblocked. The lamp worked perfectly. I inspected my temple in the bathroom mirror and found nothing. No mark, no bruise, no evidence of what I vividly remembered. Had it been just another nightmare? The details were too specific, too consistent with what I'd experienced while certainly awake. At breakfast, only 4 of us appeared: me, Elena, Michael, and Jason. The others were undergoing individual assessments, according to Dr. Villario. "Where's Tara?" Elena asked directly. "She experienced an adverse reaction and had to withdraw from the study," Dr. Villario replied smoothly. "Nothing serious, but we take participant safety very seriously." The day's tests were more invasive. They placed us in the MRI-like machine, projected images that flickered too fast to consciously perceive, and measured our physiological responses to sounds at various frequencies. Some induced nausea or vertigo. Others triggered emotional responses, inexplicable fear, sadness, or euphoria. During a bathroom break, Elena slipped me a note: "Meet in kitchen at midnight. Bringing evidence." That evening, Jason complained of a severe headache and was taken to what Dr. Villario called the recovery room. He didn't return. At midnight, Elena, Michael, and I gathered in the kitchen. Elena pulled out her phone. "They think they collected all our devices, but I kept a backup," she whispered. "Yesterday, I managed to access a computer in one of the monitoring rooms. Look what I found." She showed us files with our names, containing detailed psychological profiles, brain scans, and sections labeled susceptibility rating and Phase 2 candidacy. My file rated me high susceptibility and primary candidate for Phase 2. More disturbing were documents outlining the true study parameters, not sleep learning, but non-consensual consciousness extraction and transfer methodology. "What does that even mean?" I asked, my mouth dry. "I think they're taking something from us while we sleep," Michael said grimly, "something related to consciousness itself. And I don't think the university IRB approved this." Elena had one more revelation. The official grant for this research came from the psychology department. But look at this email. She showed us a message mentioning additional funding from something called the Beckman Institute for Consciousness Studies, an organization that didn't appear in any university materials. "We need to get out now," I said, "tonight." We formulated a hasty plan. The sleep lab had emergency exits at both ends of the hallway. We'd trigger a fire alarm to unlock the security doors, then flee. As we prepared to leave the kitchen, Dr. Valerio stepped in, flanked by 2 technicians. "Having trouble sleeping?" she asked pleasantly. "We can help with that." One technician held what looked like a taser. The other carried a medical kit. "What did you do to Tara and Jason?" Elena demanded. "They're contributing to science in the most meaningful way possible," Dr. Valerio said. "As will you." Michael lunged toward the door, but the technician fired the taser, dropping him instantly. Elena tried to run the other direction but was caught and injected with something that made her collapse within seconds. I stood frozen, calculating my chances. Dr. Valerio noticed my hesitation. "You're different from the others," she said softly. "Your susceptibility levels are ideal. Your consciousness patterns show remarkable plasticity. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable? What are you doing to us?" I managed to ask. "Consciousness isn't fixed to one brain," she explained, her eyes gleaming with fervor. "It can be mapped, extracted, transferred. But the process requires compatible donors and recipients. You're perfect, a universal donor." She stepped closer. "We're not harming you, we're elevating you. Your consciousness won't die with your body. It will live on, serving as the foundation for a new kind of existence." The technician with the medical kit approached me slowly. "It won't hurt," Dr. Valerio promised. "And you won't remember anything when you wake up tomorrow." In that moment, I realized why each night's intrusion happened at exactly 3:17 a.m. The clock wasn't showing time, it was displaying the room number. I wasn't in room 4 as I'd been told. I was in room 317, which meant the emergency exit was directly behind me, not down the hall as I'd believed. They had been manipulating our perceptions from the start. I slammed my elbow into the emergency exit bar. An alarm blared as the door opened. Cold night air hit my face as I sprinted across the deserted campus, not looking back. I ran straight to campus police, breathlessly reporting what had happened. They seemed concerned, taking my statement seriously. 2 officers accompanied me back to the psychology building's north wing. But when we arrived, the entire top floor was dark and empty. No sleep lab, no equipment, no sign of Elena or Michael or any study. According to campus security records, the floor had been closed for renovation the entire semester. My student ID showed no record of signing up for any psychology study. My bank account showed no pending payment of $500. Elena and Michael were not registered students. According to the registrar's database, I convinced a sympathetic administrator to check. The campus counselor suggested I might be experiencing stress-induced delusions and recommended medication and rest. My roommate confirmed I had been in our dorm every night that week, though I seemed to be sleepwalking at times. I almost believed I had imagined everything until I found a small, healing puncture mark behind my ear while showering, exactly where I'd never think to look without a mirror. Sometimes I wake at exactly 3:17 a.m., feeling watched. Sometimes I experience memories that don't seem to be mine, operating sophisticated equipment I've never seen, walking corridors in buildings I've never entered. And sometimes I catch glimpses of Elena or Michael on campus. They walk right past without recognition, their faces blank, their gaits slightly mechanical, as if someone else is operating their bodies. Dr. Valerio was right about one thing. They took something from me that night. Something fundamental that I can feel missing but can't quite name. And whatever they took, I suspect they're using it still, somewhere behind the ordinary facade of university life, in rooms that exist and don't exist, with the participants who never officially enrolled in studies that were never officially approved. I've submitted formal complaints to the University Ethics Committee, the Psychology Department, even the State Board of Education. Each time, the complaint disappears from the system within hours, as if it were never filed. No one believes me, would you? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more horror stories on Moonlit Scarecrow.